Welcome to this IELTS listening practice test. There are 4 sections and 40 questions in total. Each recording is played only once. You'll have time to read the questions before each part and check your answers afterward. At the end, you'll get 10 minutes to transfer your answers. Get ready with a pen and paper. Now let's begin section 1.
Section 1. You will hear a man phoning to inquire about a job vacancy. First, you'll have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Good afternoon, Palm Resort.
Good afternoon. I am ringing about the job I understand you have vacant.
Oh, yes.
I'd like to find out some more information if I may.
Yes, of course. Can I take your name?
It's Freddie Lee.
Okay.
The man's name is Freddie Lee, so Freddie Lee has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good afternoon, Palm Resort.
Good afternoon. I am ringing about the job I understand you have vacant.
Oh, yes.
I'd like to find out some more information if I may.
Yes, of course. Can I take your name?
It's Freddie Lee.
Okay, Freddie. What would you like to know?
First of all, I'd like to know where your resort is located.
It's near the city centre on Jamieson Island. That's Jamieson.
Oh, brilliant. That's only 5 minutes from me. I finish at my college on the 12th of May, so I'll be available for work from that date. Will there be any vacancies at that time?
Well, summer is our busiest season, beginning on the 11th July, so that's when you would be starting.
Sounds good. And are there any age limitations?
That would depend on the place you're applying for. How old are you?
I'm 17.
Well, we require our bartenders to be 18 or older, which means you would be working as a waiter. There are 4 vacancies. There were originally 6. However, we have since filled 2 of these.
Okay, great. Could I ask about the pay?
We're offering £5.52 an hour.
That's very good. My last job was £4.45 an hour. And can I also ask about what qualities you're looking for, like any particular skills or experience?
We don't normally require applicants to have any past experience. However, during the summer season, we have weekly shows in which our waiters are asked to perform. The routines are very simple, so no dancing skills are needed. However, you will need to be able to sing.
I have never sung professionally, but I'm keen on it and have been told that I'm talented, so I think this will be a good fit. Are there any other duties that I'd be responsible for?
As a waiter, you'll have a few different duties. We offer table service, so you'll have to take food orders from customers and carry the food from the kitchen to their tables. We like to give our customers a relaxed experience, so we'll also need you to supervise and take care of their children.
I have a babysitter, so I'm very comfortable doing that. Is there a play area for them in the resort?
Unfortunately, there is no facility for children here at the resort, but there is a large playground just down the road.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, You have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
So I would just walk the children down to the playground each day?
No, the road is very busy and the pavements are so narrow that it's unsafe to take the children for walks there. It would be very advantageous if you could drive so that you can safely strap the children into the back seat and transport them back and forth.
I'm currently taking driving lessons, so if all goes well, I should have my permit by the time I begin work.
We feel it's pretty good, and we also offer some good fringe benefits for our employees.
Really?
Well, because of the difficulties of getting public transport, if you're working after 10 o'clock, we drive you home.
OK, that sounds fine. Do you have a staff room where I would be able to eat my packed lunches?
All of our employees eat in the dining hall once our customers have finished eating their lunch. We like to make sure that our employees are well nourished, so we would provide you with a meal every lunchtime. There is no need to bring in a packed lunch.
Wow, that's good to know. I think that's all of the information that I needed. I'll be sure to post my application to you later today.
OK, sure. Once we have looked over your application, we may ask you to come for an interview. We normally hold our interviews on Fridays. However, the manager is taking a long weekend this week, so the interview would be on Thursday. Is that OK for you?
That's good for me.
Fine. 10:30 a.m?
Yes, fine. Would 10 o'clock be OK?
Perfect. And could you bring along a reference letter from your employer?
Yes, that's fine. No problem. Could you tell me what else I have to do?
Well, you need to come into the desk and fill out some forms. We need a document for ID, so a bank statement would be fine.
I've got that. And what else?
Well, you need to bring a photo with you. Having said that, it would be also a good idea for you to attach it to your application. This will help us to distinguish your application from the others.
OK, no problem. I have a couple of spares from when I renewed my passport.
Good. We look forward to seeing you.
OK, thank you so much. You've been very helpful.
No problem. Goodbye.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a guide talking to a group of visitors in a garden. First, you'll have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Hello, welcome to Pine Garden. My name is Manuel, and I'd like to tell you a few things about our establishment before you all wander off and begin your exploration of the grounds. I know you're keen to begin, so I'll try to keep this short. First of all, I'd like to explain what you can do with your ticket. If you want to be closer to nature, you could visit our planting area. In that area, visitors can plant small flowers and bulbs that will grow and become part of the garden. The planting activity is completely free. However, if you have sensitive hands, you'll need to purchase garden gloves to protect your skin. Here at Pine Garden, we sell a number of wooden goods carved from trees that have been felled in our very own pine forest. If you feel like getting involved and having a go yourself, you can join one of our bush timbering lessons free of charge, where you'll be able to make your own keyring under the supervision of a skilled craftsman. The most popular attraction in the garden is our aviary, where you can observe a whole range of bird species. Entry to this section is free, but you have to pay a small supplement in order to enter the hummingbird section. Also, the insect hut not far from it may arouse your interest. There you can find some interesting insects such as butterflies, pocket ladybugs, dragonflies and so on. And there's no extra charge for that. Unfortunately, there are some areas that are temporarily off limits to visitors today. For example, the gift shop that closed earlier this year and won't be open for another month or so. As I mentioned before, however, you're free to visit our restaurant for food and snacks, and if you're looking to purchase a gift, why not buy that special someone a potted bush or orchid from our plant care centre? And our new treetop cafe is under construction, which will be very impressive when it's finished. In fact, the model town's already opened ahead of schedule, and it's attracting a lot of people. Now, our tourist office is normally available to provide tourists with a variety of help. However, the officer is sick at home today. Please do not let this discourage you from visiting these, as they provide quite an experience.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you'll have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
I also would like to introduce you to our plant specialists, who are responsible for the wonderful plant displays here at Pine Garden. Mrs. Mary is one of our experts, and she is personally responsible for our beautiful display of plants that are all found growing naturally in the local area. Mr. Burson has the difficult task of growing varieties of plants that are suited to much drier and hotter climates than ours, which means we do not have to store water on site. If you visit the glasshouse, you'll be able to see many plants that he has managed to cultivate without the need for rain or irrigation. Mr. Smith is responsible for the produce that you can eat in our restaurant, which ranges from varieties that grow under the ground to those that grow on trees and bushes. Now, Mr. Nooney here is our expert on the most commonly growing plant in the world, grass. You may have noticed how beautifully green and lush our grounds are, thanks to his specialist knowledge. Mr. Scanlon ensures that our soil is full of nutrients so that the natural habitat is supported and encouraged. He does this by fertilizing the earth with a special formula of his own creation. Finally, I would like to introduce you all to Dr. Mandelson. He is the manager of our landscaping team and works closely with our other experts to ensure that everyone works together to create a landscape that is both beautiful and sustainable. Well, that just about rounds it up. Now, if anyone has any questions...
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear Sally and Mike, 2 students, and their professor talking about their classwork. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hello, Sally and Mike.
Hello, Professor.
Welcome to the third meeting of our after-school club, where we discuss topics from the syllabus in order to help you to understand your classwork better. Now, I hope that you've read the notes I gave you last week on the ancient African traditions, as this will be the focus of our discussion today. Who can tell me how they were able to recognize different stars?
Did they measure the distance between them?
No, Sally, I'm afraid that's incorrect. Mike, do you know the answer?
Historians used to think that the ancient Africans recognized stars by observing the manner in which they affected each other, but further research showed that they used the location of the stars in order to distinguish one from the other.
Well done, Mike. Very good. Can either of you tell me anything about the Wayaka people?
They have a lot of money, but do not trust banks to keep it safe. They believe that it's in their best interest to help themselves, not assist others. Instead, the tribe looks after their own finances and generate income from lending money to others in low-interest loans.
What problems do the Africans suffer from?
They used to suffer greatly from drought. However, they have now developed clever ways of overcoming it by moving to higher land. There are, however, far more predators in these mountainous areas, so it is vital that the Africans learn how to protect themselves in this new environment.
Yes, that's right. Also, compared to more developed countries, the Africans are less concerned with their international status, which I find interesting.
Very good. What else are the local people concerned with?
Unlike other, poorer tribes, they have plenty of nourishing food, and they are able to afford vaccines that prevent them from catching diseases.
They historically lived in the west of Africa, although later they were chased off their land by other tribes competing for food and water. It is their hope that they will eventually be able to return to their original homeland.
Why has the financial condition of the African people deteriorated?
Despite their modern transportation system, they find it very difficult to trade, because their tools are not sophisticated enough to mine minerals from the land. They have permission to engage in these commercial activities, so once they have the right tools, they will be able to develop a very large income from trade.
Do you think that this new income will stop Africans suffering from starvation in the near future?
Unfortunately, I don't think so. They should be able to start trading next year, but they will only have enough income to start growing sufficient food and crops to support the local people in the long-term future.
Yes, that's correct.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now, listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
There are many charities from developed countries that are helping to ship food to African countries in order to feed the starving. Unfortunately, it is difficult to transport a lot of food to the right places, but Africans are very good at sharing and making sure that everyone gets something to eat.
African governments are also starting to pay more attention to the needs of their people. They have been directing a lot of money to help build schools in the more impoverished villages as a part of their new education plan, which is fantastic. This means that, hopefully, all African children will be able to attend school daily without having to walk long distances.
Yes, absolutely. Do you remember any other information from your class notes?
Historically, the tribes in Africa often used to migrate across the country in search of food and water. They would live in tents that were easy to dismantle and transport to other locations.
That's true, but now they are being encouraged to settle down in one area so they can establish colonies and build facilities for themselves, such as houses and schools. Some villages have even developed specific customs. For example, the Wayaka people consider it impolite if you do not bring gifts when visiting someone.
Bravo! You've both contributed fantastic points to our conversation. That concludes our session for today. I'll see you next week.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a talk on the research of the sensory systems of different species. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second lecture in our series on animal senses. Today I'll be comparing the sensory systems of different species and discussing how these senses enable them to explore their environment. When it comes to the sense of smell, you may think that human beings have powerful and well-evolved sensory systems. However, some animals have a sense of smell that is far more powerful than ours. Dogs, for example, have a sense of smell that is 40 times greater than a human's and can distinguish 220 kinds of smell. Some animals can even smell odours that are undetectable by the human nose, such as carbon dioxide. There are also animals that have a relatively weak sense of smell. For example, there are species of beetles that can recognise the odours of certain plants but not others. The bee is an interesting example to examine in reference to smell, because they experience this sense via their antennae. Bumblebees have stings, but it's rare that they actually use this weapon. When a bee feels threatened, it will use its legs to signal and warn others about the threat before it stings. This is called a signalling posture and involves the bee lifting its two back legs into the air. Within any hive there is a hierarchy with the queen bee at the top. The queen bee is able to control the colony by monitoring its movement through her feet. The queen bee is the only reproductive female in the entire colony, and she is also able to sting multiple times, unlike the worker bees that will die if they sting. In the insect world, scent can also be used to facilitate mating, as females decide whether or not to mate with a male, depending on the quality of his scent. One such example of this is the female butterfly, who will only mate with the male butterfly that produces the strongest pheromones. This is how the species ensures that only the best genes are perpetuated in order to create the strongest offspring. Next, we move on to the hearing sense of beetles. Interestingly, beetles do not have ears, but instead use their feet to detect vibrations caused by sound. This is particularly useful when searching for food among the trees in which they live, as they are able to detect the location and movement of their prey by monitoring vibrations in the woodlands. The final sense that we'll be looking at today is sight. Snakes are a particularly interesting case study, as they do not see shapes and colours as humans do, but instead hunt their prey by detecting the heat radiating from their mouths. This makes them incredibly effective predators, as they are able to zero in on their prey very quickly and efficiently. From a distance, a snake is able to locate the heat radiating from a mouse, for example, and upon moving closer will be able to determine its body shape. This can help prevent the snake from attempting to attack prey that is too large for it. Once a snake has killed and eaten its prey, it goes into a state of hibernation, whereby all of its energy is directed towards digesting the food stored in its stomach. Depending on the size of the snake and its prey, this hibernation can last from hours to days. Once fully fed, a large snake will not need to eat again for the next couple of weeks. During the breeding season, however, female snakes will feed more frequently. The heat detection of a snake is very complex, and can be even more effective than the vision of a human. It not only uses heat to determine the location of its prey, but before it commits to hunt, it will also use the heat to calculate how much distance it has to travel in order to reach it. This prevents the snake from wasting energy hunting prey that is too far away to catch.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you will now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.